And so I want to start off today by talking about how you're learning to prioritize self-care in your life and where that fits, what works for you.
That's a hard one. I've struggled with trying to, put myself first. I always put other people first. I've never, ever put myself first.
He does, people. 100%. And that's why I was like, I love that we talk about these things today, because we talked about it last week a little bit with Valencia, but Abby is a take care of everyone around her, people pleaser. How can I help you? Put herself last kind of gal. And so she's been getting opportunities to work on that. So, okay, go ahead and elaborate.
Yeah, I'm definitely in a space where I have been really trying to work on that, and have been just really trying to figure out what self-care looks like for me. And so this past year while in grad school, it was hard because it was a 1-year program. It was very intensive, and I found myself really stressed out at times and found myself like not giving myself enough time to not think about school. So I had to figure out ways where I was able to kind of sit down and really like take care of myself. And one of the things that I honestly like learned to do, or started off with self-care, is like just going to the nail salon and getting my nails done. And that's when I just really loved getting my nails done. And so I think that's one of the things where I really started off, my self-care. And I was in therapy for a little bit during school as well. So that's one of the things that I talked through with my therapist. And we had come to like not an agreement, but a place of like self-care is really what makes, I guess, the best for you. It's not really like determined on what it looks like for other people. So I started off with that. And one of the things that I eventually ended up doing is kind of just like writing too. I like to write and I like to journal. So I did that. I like to write all like notes and stuff for myself. So I kind of incorporated that as well. And honestly, like for me, just taking time for myself is what self-care looks like too. Like I said before, I do everything for everyone and I put myself last, and I put myself in positions where I am just kind of overdrained, and I don't really know how I get myself there sometimes, because I just always am doing things for other people and just so willingness to, give and not give for myself. So yeah, I'm in a state where I'm working on that, but it's happening. It's slowly happening, but it's a progress.
It is. It's a progress. It's a progress that will change throughout your life in different seasons, and it will always be a focus. I think that's the one thing that's important, is that we're always going to be working on these things, because there's always going to be people pulling us in different directions. But we've all, I think, as we have these conversations and are realizing through our own journeys, for people to actually get the best version of us and who we are, we have to actually put our time into ourselves first, so that we're giving from a full cup and not an empty cup, and not a martyr complex cup, and not I'm drained and I've hit the wall and I have no more to give cup. And so if we can change the language that the culture tries to tell women, that self-care is selfish and taking time for it is selfish, it's like, no. The joke's on you. You've actually been getting the worst of us by us being drained. If you'll, give us a space to take care of ourselves a little bit and refill our cups, you're going to be getting the best of us, and we all win with that. And I think, but that's not what we hear, and that's not what we're told. And so we kind of have to sometimes, I think, hit a wall before we realize that this is just not working for me. And I think that's a space that you have walked in and experienced. But when you have been operating in one facet for so long, it takes time. And like you said, different seasons in life are going to be pulled different directions. But if you can start those habits now in your 20s and just make it part of this is my non-negotiable, then, and I think that's where we all have to get to that space. So it's good to hear you talking about that. And I love how you identified, these are the things that work for me. This is what I found, because I think that's the other thing we've been talking about, is different things work for different people. What works for you doesn't necessarily work for the next person, or what works for them doesn't necessarily work for you. So finding that stuff, how do I feel rested. You get to decide that. You get to define that. I think that's really important for all of us to come to that conclusion. So we get to define that for ourselves. This is very tightly connected to prioritizing self-care, but it's that confidently setting boundaries. How have you, she's smiling right now. We're on Zoom and she's smiling because she knows this is something that she's really learning right now. And I thought about you and I'm like, the boundaries conversation is going to be great with Abby because she's getting to practice that as we speak. And so talk about that.
Oh, boundaries. I have like a love-hate relationship with boundaries. Just because I think they're great. I think boundaries need to be set in everything that I guess you do in life. And, I think it's really important that people acknowledge and uphold your boundaries because that's when I feel like people get taken advantage of. And just coming from like personal experience, I've set boundaries in friendships, in relationships, in myself, and in everything. And I've seen them just be broken in the past year and how much it's really like hurt me and affected me. And, it just kind of like shows that because boundaries also comes with like respect, in my opinions. And your boundaries are, broken and you've set them in place, especially in friendship and relationships. When you've set them in place, you feel very disrespected when, they don't care about the boundaries that you've set up and they just care about, I guess, themselves and not really worrying about like other people and like just hurting other people. And I think the reasons why boundaries are set up is to, like protect our feelings and to respect our spaces and respect our asks and wants and needs and everything like that. So I think when, they get broken, you're put in a space where it's like, well, wow, I was not respected. And was I not even like cared about? Like, it just makes you question, like, honestly, everything. And I've found myself putting the blame on me. Yeah, that's where I kind of get like messed up and I'm like, well, what did I do? And, like, was I not good enough to do X, Y, and Z to keep these boundaries in place? Or, that's something that I'm really like struggling with now is being good enough for just anything in general, like career wise, relationship wise, friendship wise, like, am I being the best friend, girlfriend, like everything that I can possibly be. And like when those boundaries get broken, I'm just sitting here like, oh, well, maybe I didn't enforce them enough or did I enforce them too much? Like it's like boundaries is such an interesting topic. And I think everyone should have them for sure. And I think the hardest thing for me is like when boundaries are broken, what consequences come afterwards, in my opinion. And so like, how do you go about, being like serious about like your next thing and like putting your foot down? That's something that I really, really need to work on, is putting my foot down and, not allowing certain things that I don't want and not allowing certain things that are going to continue to hurt me. So, and I think boundaries is one of the things that once you set them and if they're broken, you need to full-heartedly like stick to, you walking away from a friendship or relationship or anything like that. Or like, just not giving too many chances because then you'll just get walked all over. And so, yeah, so boundaries is love-hate relationship, but they're always important to have.
Yeah. And I think you've brought some good points. And I think the one thing that I've really learned through this is that, because I've had the same issues of like, what did I do wrong? Why wasn't I worth the time? But 99% of the time, I'm going to say probably 100% of the time, the people that have issues with your boundaries have no idea what that means. Mm-hmm. They have no concept of boundaries. They don't understand them. And they also don't have the emotional health to understand them. It's never been asked of them. They've never asked it of themselves. And so I've really had to really kind of change the language. Instead of what did I do wrong? It's like, you know what? These people, I know going in, they don't necessarily have an understanding of what boundaries are, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't set them. And that doesn't mean that if I ask them to honor them, that they should feel like it's okay for them not to, just because it's not how they live. But that's a tough conversation because it automatically comes at you. I mean, it's very natural, I think, inclination for us to just go into, oh, and it's like, no, unfortunately, they just don't have their own in their life or the emotional health to understand the importance of them. And that's not a reflection on me. That's a reflection on where they are. Mm-hmm. So to be my best self and to honor myself, I'm going to continue to enforce them and ask them and realize that maybe some of these relationships aren't the best thing for me, but that's hard to do. Mm-hmm. It's hard to do. And it's hard because communicating boundaries to people that don't understand boundaries, it's one thing to set them. Like we talked about this in the episode with my daughters and husband a couple of weeks ago. It's one thing to set them and be super excited, like, yes, this is what I need to be healthy. It's another thing when someone crosses them or violates them to be like, actually, that's a boundary that I've set and you're not honoring that. That's where the hard part comes in. and being true to that and reminding yourself, no, I'm worth this. And it is, I have communicated this to them, but it's hard. And I love your authenticity and talking about it, because I think it's important for people to realize they are hard and it does challenge you. And it isn't something that just, comes easy, and it takes work and time and trusting yourself and thinking enough of yourself to continue to honor yourself in that way. So thank you. I appreciate your just genuineness and sharing that. The next thing I want to talk about is taking care of our emotional health as much as our physical health. How do you see a tie-in with that?
I think they are very much like correlated. The first thing, honestly, that comes to mind is recently what happened with Simone Biles and what she did. A break from just because, like, you can be in great physical health, but if your mental health isn't great too, that's like a problem. And that's like a struggle that a lot of, I think, like women and necessarily like Black women face too, and also Black men as well, because mental health is not talked about in the Black community, and it's not really prioritized, and it's looked like down upon in the Black community. And I think it needs to be talked about for sure, because a lot of people don't really like believe in like mental health as being like something to really focus on, because you're supposed to just be like, oh, everything is good, like your life is good, like what's the problem, what's going on, when deep down, like there's a lot of people that are struggling and you may not even know. Like there's a lot that, people can be going through, and people know how to put on a smile on their face and keep doing what they're doing, but deep down they're not okay and not happy. And I think that's one of the things that I think as a society need to focus on, especially in the Black community, is making sure that our mental health is in a really good spot and in a place where we can be like actually okay, like 100% okay, and not trying to put on a face to make it seem like everything's good and dandy, because if it's not, then it's not. Like you like, there's ways to fix that. There's ways to, get help with that. And I think a lot of people, shy away from going to therapy and all that stuff just because it's like stigmatized. And that's one of the things that I wanted to kind of break through with my capstone project. And one of the things that, is being seen today with Simone Biles is, Black women not being taken seriously in athletics and being not taken seriously in majority white spaces, and, getting shamed for taking a break because their mental health is like not up to par because they can't perform well if, their mental health is not doing well. And there's just a lot with like mental health that I think a lot of people need to be taking into consideration, because it also affects like other people too. Like if you're not okay, you're gonna, affect your relationships that you have with your family, your friends, significant others, and all that stuff. And I mean, I've seen that in my own personal life as well, with friendships and relationships and, like people both not being okay, like mentally has really affected like everything in the relationships and friendships that I've seen and I've been in and all that stuff. It really takes a toll. And I think a lot more people need to take it seriously and really kind of just really be, I don't know, get like, I don't know, it needs to be talked about. So yeah, it's just
yeah. And I think that you brought up a really good point about, and I'm asking this as a question because me as a white woman, I don't have the same experiences and I can't. I think there's this problem in this country right now where people are making decisions for people that can't have their experiences. I can never have your experience. My skin color, it's never going to happen. So to assume that I can and assume that I know your story and what you're going through and why Black women choose the things you, I'm not in that space. I need to be learning from you and understanding you. So as I ask this question in terms of the mental health in the Black community, as I look at it, I'm like, you're all just trying to survive a lot of persecution, systemic racism. And so it's just, and I think over generations, you've gotten so used to just like, we got to survive, we got to be sturdy, we got to be strong, that there's been no space or freedom to even take the time and consider what that's done to you emotionally. And I don't think it's any accident that when we look at statistics of health, that you see people in the Black and brown communities have higher rates of cancer, heart issues, diabetes. I'm telling you, this emotional toll, it takes a toll. You cannot have those just constantly stressful experiences and not have it affect you. And it's showing up in these other ways, I would argue. And I think there's a lot of statistics out there to support that. So is that where you think the stigma comes from? Or where do you think that comes from in terms of the stigma about mental health in the Black community?
It's hard to, I'll talk about it in my experiences. So coming from an immigrant household, so my family's from Ethiopia originally. So in my household, mental health isn't looked at seriously, like in our culture, just because I wouldn't say it's non-existent. It's just not what I guess older people and older generations are used to. And they don't really know about it. It's not educated. It's not talked about, all that stuff. And so I think that's one of the things that has an effect on it, just because like it's not talked about and it's not taken seriously, and people that are older than us hasn't had that incorporated in their lives, I guess. Cause I would say like now it's more talked about. It's more, I guess, accepted. It's more kind of like taken seriously. It's more in conversation in this generation. So I think in older generations, it's harder to kind of like put in place, because I know in my family, I've had some, stubborn people who don't want to learn about like multiple things and don't really want to like open up and talk about different things that make people uncomfortable. So I guess it's coming from like a bunch of different places. It's really, really hard to like kind of pinpoint to, because I haven't done that much research on it, but just based off of my experiences, like it's just the knowledge behind it is very little. And since there isn't a lot of knowledge, it's hard to kind of talk about it. It's hard to kind of like accept, and mainly like people really look towards like physical health when everything is all tied together and like your mental health and your physical health need to be, intertwined and yeah, exactly. So it's very complex.
Yeah, it is. I mean, these people are complex and we tend to be afraid of things we don't understand too. And I think that factors in. And there's also trust issues of like, okay, who's telling you this? Because I don't know if I trust them. They haven't taken very good care of me in some of these other spaces. So why should I trust what they're saying about that? I mean, I think it is complicated, and it's not a one story for everybody. But I appreciate you bringing up this topic and being willing to talk about it. And Embody the Melanin does a great job of addressing that. And your generation is just so much more willing to have these conversations. And it's so important because the whole reason I started this podcast is so we can have these discussions before people like me are 50 and like, you know what? Here I am with all of these things that I haven't dealt with for all these years. And this is where it landed me. And you all can be better than that. And I'm so happy to see you being, unafraid of those conversations and bringing those topics up. How do you think we can support ourselves and other women in living unapologetically? And I think you do this in a lot of ways really well.
Interesting. One thing that I've learned, or I'm currently learning now is, like as women, I guess like me as myself, like I talked about earlier, always put other people ahead of me. And I think that is something that a lot of maybe women do. And so I think one of the things that I am really learning right now is putting myself first and putting my career first and making sure that I'm 100% okay before I can give myself to somebody else or give my all to like everything that in my career, like everything like kind of like ties in together, like in making sure that, like we are okay. And I think I've done this with like my capstone and like a lot of projects that I've done in my grad school. I've done a lot of research on like women and in social media and in athletics, because those are the things that I'm like really passionate about. And kind of just talking about how we, kind of get like pushed to the side and we don't really think about how it affects us and how it affects maybe like other people as well. And like people that are looking up to us. And I use a lot of professional athletes in my like research and a lot of people looking up to them on social media and stuff like that. And I think the ones that really like stand out are the ones that are unapologetically themselves. There you go.
It's a great big word.
And just kind of like living life with, just no apologies, no fear. And that's one thing that I know I need to work on is I need to stop saying sorry for things that,
yes, I'm with you on that.
Because I say sorry for things that I do not do and I'm not in the wrong. And I feel like I have definitely come in a state or have been in situations where I've apologized to not make somebody upset. And I've apologized to, like stop an argument or like keep them around. I don't know, keep them around. Just apologized when I did not need to be apologized. And in instances I've had a situation where the person was like, don't apologize. What are you apologizing for? Like you did nothing wrong. Like I've been like, called out on it, but I've definitely found myself, apologizing for things that there's no need to be apologizing for. And I think that's something that me and like maybe all women have to really work on is be your best self and like do it for you. Don't do it for other people and make sure that you're always 100% okay in a situation because you never know what's going to happen. And at the end of the day, like all you really have is yourself. And so like you can have your family, you can have your friends, you can have your, relationships, your significant others. But at the end of the day, like you're your only person and you're the only person that can get you through anything. And so you are going to have that support system, but you need to make sure that like you're okay. And I think that's a lot of struggles that women have is since they put their energies on everybody else, they sometimes don't make sure that they're okay. So that's one thing that I'm focusing on and like prioritizing what I need to do to make sure that I'm okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And just not abandoning ourselves and not feeling like we have to explain why we're making a decision. I think those are all things that we fall into that I've been talking about a lot lately in these conversations. And it's interesting to me that I'm talking to women from all places in the country, all different ages, backgrounds. And yet we're all saying that same thing. I think it's just like, wow, so fascinating. But it also gives me hope, because if we're all saying that same thing about that, we're all having this conversation now. We can all change that. Mm-hmm. So as much as we can make that difference, and we can be there for each other in a way that's like, no, we're going to live unapologetically. And we're going to do this. And we don't have to explain why, other than it's the right thing to do for us. And the world is better for it when we're healthier. And so, yeah, I appreciate you just talking about that. Man, the sorry thing. I think that's just huge for women. That's just huge. And I told this story last week with Valencia, how my therapist had me 1 week count how many times I said sorry.
I've done that before.
And then she had me document why I said I was sorry. And the number of, oh my gosh. I know I've mentioned that 2 weeks in a row now, but it was a daunting, because it's one of the things that drives my husband Brady crazy. It's like, why do you apologize? He's better about holding me accountable on that than anybody. He's like, stop, take it back. I mean, and we've had to do that a lot, but I saw having that person in your life that will do that with you, because it becomes so ingrained. It just spits out before you even know that you've said it. And then you're like, whoa, wait a minute. So yeah, so getting a handle on that on your 20s, believe me, it's going to be a lot easier. And it's not easy because we're just so conditioned, I think. The importance of setting your why and coming back to it. How do you feel? Is that something that you've been able to institute? How do you feel about the why factor?
Is that like why I'm meant to be like?
Why? So, and it really kind of ties into living out of your own expectations versus others, and examining, like, if someone offers me this job, I'm going to use it. You'll understand this. Someone's going to offer me this job in Philadelphia. It's a great job. My parents would love it if I lived in Philadelphia. So, what do I do with that? Because, and you can elaborate on why I used Philadelphia as an example in a minute, versus I got this great job offer in Atlanta, and my family's really bummed because I'm going to be in Atlanta, but it's a great opportunity and I love Atlanta. Okay. So talk me through your whys on those two scenarios.
Okay. Now I understand.
I knew that would like, she'll understand this one.
I honestly I've definitely seen growth since I've graduated at Guilford. Yes, definitely seen growth. And so I think coming back to those two examples, I'm in a state where, my dad I'm his oldest child. So I'm the first, to get out the house and do all that stuff. And also with our culture too, it's very unusual for the, kids to get out the house before they're married and all that stuff. And
yeah.
Yeah. So a friend of mine and I were talking about it because it's the same in her culture as well. So we were talking about it the other day, and I never really thought about it until that conversation. And so she asked me, she was like, do people usually leave home before they get married? And I was like, honestly, no, like they don't really do that. That's very interesting. I never really thought about it that way. So long story short, my dad is in that, that mindset of you've graduated college, you have all these, loans you got to pay off, this, that, and the fourth. And I'm like, yes, Dad, I understand, but I'm about to be 25 in October. I don't want to live at home. I don't want to do that. And I understand the burden that I'm putting on myself where I have to, pay bills, but that's what adults do. That's what adults do. And, I've been very fortunate for my parents to, help me and support me and all that stuff. But I think I'm just at the stage in my life where I've lived on my own in a different state for a very long time. And I've been very comfortable with living on my own. I've never really had to be, I don't know. I've been very comfortable and I've been pretty responsible about it. And, I'm in a stage where I'm just very happy in, North Carolina, and going back to Philly where I'm from. Like, I just know it will take a toll on my mental health. And I've been trying to, put that first. And if I explain that to my dad, he's going to look at me like I'm crazy. So I just tell him like, I'm not looking for jobs up there. Like I've not found anything up there. And I've purposely been applying to jobs everywhere but Philly and New York. Just cause, like financially, I know that I can't afford it. And also like, I have grown to love the space that I've had from, my family. I love my family to death and I miss them. And I'm excited to like see them for a short amount of time and then come back to my own space and all that stuff. And I think that's really where I found my why and like what I want to do, and really just putting my career first and putting where I know I have support and network, which is down here in North Carolina. And I've really tried to, explain that to my father, but he just doesn't understand it. And at the end of the day, like you can explain something to someone, but as long as you understand what you're doing for yourself and as long as you are confident and that's what you want to do, it really honestly doesn't matter like who says yes and who says no. Because at the end of the day, like in my situation, my parents are my parents. Like they're going to support me regardless of what happens. And all they really care about is I get a job. So it's all that.
At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to.
Right. Exactly. So I get a job in my field. They've done what they needed to do. So, so I think that's really where I've shown and grown and was kind of like putting my foot down and being like, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm passionate about. And this is where I'm going to find the work that I want to do. And it's been really hard, even like going to grad school too. Like I've had to put my foot down too. And like, I knew Elon was the right choice for me. And my dad was still trying to, make me go to Temple and all that stuff. And I'm like, the programs, aren't there for that. And he was not very supportive in me going into like an interactive media program. I mean, he really wants to see me on TV, reading the news, but that's not what I want to do. I don't want to do that at all. And so I really tried to, like being in the arts and side of things has been very, I guess difficult for him to understand because he's a very, traditional like doctor, lawyer type job situation. And my sister is like a music business major, which also doesn't really help because she's in the business like aspect. So at NYU too at that. So she's like, in that stage and I'm here like, oh, I just want to create content because that's like really fun for me. And he just like doesn't really get that. But I've learned to really just be like, this is what I love to do. This is what I'm passionate about. And this is what I want to do and all that stuff. So it's definitely helped me kind of put my foot down and all that stuff as far as like career wise and knowing what's going to make me happy, like in the workforce, because that's what is most important. And just knowing that even if it's my parents and even if it's my dad, like at the end of the day, I still have to put my foot down and still have to do what's best for me because at the end of the day, I'm the only person that knows what's going to be best for myself.
Absolutely. And you've kind of done a great combination of practicing your why, boundaries, and living out of your own expectations. Because I think especially with parents, especially when we know our parents love us and they mean well, it's really hard to be like, no, this is, I love you and I appreciate your input, and you've done so you've gotten to practice all of those things with that. And that's been something that, I don't know 5 years ago if you could have done that. And you're just in a space now where you're able to do that. And I think that you've had a chance to practice that and you're doing that really well. So I know, and it's hard. And I'm talking as a parent because I've got, as you know, kids are that age. So I can kind of play devil's advocate. And I appreciate where your dad's coming from. It's hard. You want your kids close. You want what's best for them. You miss them. You have your idea based on your own experience of what you think is best. But, you're taking it. And I think that all of us parents get to at some point, like, I've taught them to be strong and, smart and make good decisions. And now they're doing that and I have to let them do that. But It's hard. It's hard when we love you and we want you close, but I think you've gotten an opportunity to like, no, I understand. I know myself and this is what I need to do. But I knew giving you that example would clarify that for you. The next thing I want to talk about is how are you with accepting all the layered aspects of yourselves? And what I mean is, I think sometimes we want to really focus on the good things and the good experiences and the positive things. And we want to kind of want to push those hard, sad, tough, difficult experiences aside because they're not pleasant, or maybe we're not proud of a decision we made. I'm speaking out of my own experience here, or whatnot. But then at the end of the day, it's like, all those experiences have made me who I am. Mm-hmm. And all of the things I've learned from those make me who I am. And without those experiences, I mean, I've gotten here. That's where I've gotten. So talk about where you are with that, because it's tough to do.
So I guess like coming from like creative field and starting that really young. I started like photography in high school. So I've learned to kind of like take my flaws and use them to grow ever since like a young age. Cause for some weird reason, photography teachers are just brutal and they will just go at you like crazy. They just don't.
That's interesting. I didn't know.
All the photography teachers I've had since high school have just been blunt, very blunt. And
okay. Interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting. They're all very like, and so I guess from then on and like taking critiques and feedback about my work has really like taught me to focus on the flaws that I have as a person. And so it's also helped me to realize like, I wouldn't say my toxic traits, but my flawed traits, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've definitely learned to kind of understand when I'm in the wrong and kind of understand some of the things that I do can be, I wouldn't say like problematic, but are not like okay. And so I've like taken all of that and kind of like been like, okay, like in this situation, this is what you said and this is what you did. This is how you acted. But you acted in, fear, and you acted in frustration. You acted in like pain. But how could you have like done that differently in the situation that has happened? And, I've really learned that in honestly my relationships that I've had. And because I've always been told like, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, you're so great, this, that, and forth. And I always like stop them and I'm like, no, like, I'm not perfect. I'm not flawless. Like, I have things that I need to work on. And one of the things that I've learned is really taking a step back and thinking about a situation or like an argument that, I've been in or I've had, and really evaluating like what I did in that sense. And like one of the things that I'm like, okay, well, that was bad. Like, I should not have done that. I should not have said that, or I shouldn't have done all that stuff. So in that sense, I've learned it that way. In school, in graduate school, working with like difficult people, I guess. I don't know.
Gotta love those group projects.
Yes, it's just one group project that drove me crazy. But a friend of mine and I were put in a group with someone who we just never really got along with throughout the whole program. And we were like, oh, wow, the last couple of weeks of school, we're just going to be tested by, I don't know what. So we got put in this group project, and that has really taught me in a career setting of how to work with different people, how to understand like what I did wrong and what I like have said, and what I've, just not putting the blame on the other person just because I didn't like agree with them all the time or anything like that. And I've kind of like learned how to put myself in other people's shoes as well while working on something and being like, okay, well, Abby, just because you don't understand why this isn't being done the way it is, like there has to be some type of reason of why it is actually being done. And so I've been kind of like stubborn in that sense of like, well, if it's not doing this way, then why are we not doing it? So that's like another way where I've learned. So I'm just like, honestly, this grad program and this year has taught me so much. I don't know why 2020 and 2021 has just given me all these things to learn about. I couldn't tell you. Mm-hmm. I just like, I've learned like so much about how to like kind of take and reevaluate myself too. I always do that too. I like to do like self reflection and like self-evaluation of like how I've done things in different situations and how I've done things in certain like phases in my life. And so like how I can use that to kind of grow from what I've done. And I feel like now I'm in a really good spot where it's like, I'm putting myself first. I'm putting my career first. I'm putting, what I love to do first. I'm putting, everything that is going to benefit me in life first and stop trying to live in the future, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I'm such a big planner. Like I'm such a big, like, okay, this is how my life is going to turn out. Like I want to be like, married by this, have this type of job by this age and all that stuff. And I've really just been like, okay, Abby, you need to just rewind, come back and just live in the present and live on what's going on right now. And that's what I've kind of like struggled with my career. And I'm just like, well, why am I, not getting like picked for these different jobs? Like I have these experiences, I have lots of, and I'm like, girl, you're 24 years old. Like you need to take a breath, take a step back, and you got to start somewhere. And once I kind of like reevaluated all that stuff and kind of applied for the jobs that I actually were qualified for, and I got stuff back and all that stuff. And I'm in a spot where it's like, you don't have to have kids by a certain age, you don't have to be married by a certain age. Like there's so much in my career that I have to grow as a person. I want to go back to school and get my PhD and all that stuff. And so I think taking away the timing of different things and just kind of like as you go is something that I've learned and something that I'm going to try and appreciate moving forward. Someone actually told me, they were like, oh, you have everything so planned out. Like like they told me like, I thought I ruined that for you. And I was like, and that really kind of woke me up. And I was like, I mean, not everything has to be planned out. Not everything has to be like to the T. Like things can change, like life happens. Like there's so many different things that are going to come in and out your life. So it's like just being open to the change and being open to the timing of everything and just being just flexible. That's another thing is like being flexible and patient. And that's something that I think I'm in a spot where it's like, okay, Abby, you just have to be patient. Like things aren't going to come and snap your fingers. Things aren't going to as they are. Like people are going to say no to you, jobs are going to say no to you. And as much as you think you have it in the bag, you probably don't. There's probably people that, have other opportunity or other, opportunity. I don't know what I'm trying to say with that, but yeah, I'm rambling now. That's how I feel about it.
Well, no, but I think you brought up, there's a couple things there that I really loved. And one, how you talked about the evaluation of yourself, because I think it is important to evaluate how we approach things and see like, okay, this didn't go so well. How can I do better? And doing it in a way that's healthy and not in a way that we're just beating ourselves up and trying to run away from those things about us. I really like the way you've encompassed that. And you're like, okay, let's take a closer look and evaluate this in a healthy way so I can always be the best I'm going to be, knowing I'm going to make mistakes. That's okay. That's life. That's what we do. I really like your approach to that. I think that's super healthy. And I really like what you said too about, I understand the whole, I am a checklist, let's get it done kind of person. And 2020, if it didn't teach us anything else, and even into 2021, because we're not out of this yet.
Yeah.
There are just so many things out of our control. And there are so many things that there's just only so much we can do, and things are going to change and they're not going to go the way that we want them to, but that doesn't so living in that present, in that moment, enjoying that time and not being in such a hurry to get to that next thing, because maybe that next thing isn't the best thing. And not wanting to look back and be like, gosh, that time there, I really just kind of wished it away or planned it away. And I think we've all learned, everyone take a breath and just stay in this moment, because we don't know what tomorrow holds. So, hold your plans loosely. Be ready and be prepared and be responsible, but don't become so married to something that you just don't, that it just completely blows your mind when you have to shift. So I think those are some things that we've all gotten to learn, and that you guys are getting to learn sooner and earlier in your lives, but it's really going to be beneficial for you moving forward, having that mindset. I really like that. What are some practices that you use to process your emotions in a healthy way?
I have also struggled with that. I think that also comes with kind of the self-care type of thing, where I'm still kind of learning about what self-care looks like and what processing my emotions look like as well. Something that I've done that I think I'm going to try and not to do, I might pull back from it. Actually, I won't say I won't try not to do, is I look into other people and I lean on other people when I'm going through a lot of stuff. And that's normal. A lot of people go to their friends and people that they trust and all that stuff. And I think that has helped me with kind of not bottling up my emotions on the inside, but it's also kind of put me in a place where it's I'm talking about it a lot. So just kind of repeating my emotions and repeating what's been going on has kind of affected me kind of more, because I found myself in situations where my friends have known about a certain situation, and as information is coming in, I'm just being bombarded with a whole bunch of stuff, and I've noticed that I've had to be okay, let's not talk about this, because I'm just not in a space where I can just keep hearing all this new information and keep hearing all this stuff and all that. And I think one of the ways that I feel I need to start processing my emotions is maybe going to therapy again, and just doing that again, and talking through it with a therapist instead of my friends, because they can be there and support and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I found myself okay, so what are some actionable things that I can do to kind of move from these situations? And, Kylie's actually, she's my therapist, because she helps with that. And so she's kind of okay, well, how do you move from this? So talking to her has really helped me, and on actionable things to do after that, instead of just me kind of sitting there and venting, which she allows me to do that too. And all my friends do. But I've put in myself where it's at the end of the day, I feel I need to find ways to process everything by myself. So one of the things that I like to do is journal too. So I've looked into journaling and kind of writing down all how I feel, and just kind of closing my book and just putting it away, doing it that way. And then, I don't know, that's a really hard thing, because sometimes I bottle it up, and that's also not good. And I'm a very emotional person. So, I find myself crying all the time and letting that out. And that helps me too, because then I'm okay, I'm done crying. I'm good. I'm good to go. I'm ready to go. Yeah. So, and then one of the things that I really also I think definitely needs to be worked on is trying to fix things right away. And I rush to making sure everything is okay right away, and not giving it time to kind of heal, and not giving it time to, I guess, process itself out. And I wouldn't say I force things. I just say I rush things. And that's what I found myself doing in certain situations, and in my relationships, especially. And I know I'm a type of person that needs reassurance and stuff like that all the time. And so I rush for that reassurance, and I always look for that reassurance. Sometimes I'm just like, okay, you need to take a step back, because then if you rush it, it's going to like make things worse. So I think that's another thing I need to work on, is just rushing through, trying to like create a solution when a solution will come at like its timing. So, and just kind of like letting time like let itself heal out.
Yeah, no, I think you made some really good points there, because I think Kylie and I are both external processors. So we've had to work through this too, of like, okay, when does I've talked it out and I need to do that. But when does the venting become unhealthy? When am I just re-traumatizing myself or the people around me? When am I just emotionally dumping on the people around me and not really solving anything other than dumping and re-traumatizing myself? Like I'm back in the experience again. And so that's been one that I've struggled with too. I'm like, where's that balance of I need to talk it out. I need to get it out. I need to cry it out. Mm-hmm. And then I need to be like, okay, this is where I'm at. You know, what other things can I do? Do I need to write about it? Do I need to work out, physically do a workout and just get out the frustration? And I think, that it's just that kind of that realization of, okay, this is what has worked. This is where, and also back to putting the bow on. I think we want to put the bow on things and tie them up neat and pretty. And sometimes it's not time. Sometimes it's not going to be one that gets to be that, because both parties have to be willing to be a part of that. And sometimes that's just not the case. So how do we, and so how do we find that balance of not bottling up and stopping it? Because I think sometimes we get through an experience, we're like, okay, the experience is over, I'm done with it. But it's like, but the emotions from it aren't over. And so I think that's where that whole like, all right, talk it out, vent, but then recognizing those boundaries again and making sure we've worked it out in a healthy way. And, you're realizing you're seeing these things. And so it's just walking through it, like, and finding other ways. Like, okay, what are some other actionable steps I can take to do this in a healthy way, and recognizing that, it's not time yet to tie this up. And so I think those are really good recognitions, and they're hard, but it's important for us to talk about that, because I think that we want to clean up the mess and move on. Yeah. And if we don't deal with the mess in a healthy way, it will show up some other way. Yeah. Absolutely. So but tough stuff. But I love your awareness about like, no, this is what I do. This is what I need to not do. Because so much if you're not aware, I spent so many years unaware. I just was on autopilot going through. And if you can't fix something or be better or improve something if you're not aware of it. So I love your awareness on that stuff, and how I've seen you, grow in that area and see those things. So the title of our podcast, the F.E.E.L podcast, finding empowerment, embracing layers. How do you think you've lived that out? Finding empowerment, embracing your layers. We've kind of wrap it up, because we've been talking really about that the whole time. But kind of summarize that.
It's interesting. I guess kind of like what I've been kind of talking about is like the stage of life that I'm in. I saw myself in this stage of life, but I never really actually saw myself in this stage of life, if that makes sense. I have, accomplished a lot with like my schooling and my experiences and stuff like that. And I think I've grown so much as a person just from the experiences and situations that I've been in. And I think right now I'm confident in saying that I feel like very empowered as a person, and I feel very like empowered in where I'm going. And I am starting to realize that it's only me and I'm the only player for my team. Like, I have my support system, I have my people. But at the end of the day, like, putting in for myself is what is most important, and making sure like I'm like embracing myself for all of my layers and all of my complexities. There we go. my complexities and, like making sure that I understand that, you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. And, really just taking every opportunity to grow and really taking everything kind of like step by step and not rushing through my life and not, looking at too far ahead in the future and like really living into the present and really just embracing like what's going on right now and like kind of like the moment and like kind of letting life play out for myself. And because I've always been in a place where everything has been planned out. And it's like, now I'm like, well, what do I do? I've like planned all my, this is going to sound cocky, but I've accomplished my goals. So I'm like, I'm in a spot where it's like, I've set my goals and, I still have goals that I still have to accomplish, but that's like later on in life. So I'm kind of in a state where I'm just like, okay, like what's going to happen next? Like I'm very open to what's going on currently. And like, I'm excited to see what, like life has to offer for me, like in the near future. And so I think with that, I've really learned how to embrace myself, embrace my layers and embrace, really how I'm supposed to be as like a person and taking the time to think about, how I look at self-care and how I look at different things in ways that I can make myself okay and like make myself feel okay and be okay and put myself in situations where I know it's going to be the best for myself and not doing things because it's going to please other people or because I'm trying to prove something else to somebody else where,
the proving thing, that's big.
Yeah. Cause that's one of the things that I've kind of like lived up to. And I've noticed that like, you don't have to prove to anybody, like you don't have to prove anybody wrong. Like whatever you do, whatever you decide to do is what you think is going to be best for you. Like, like if you get hurt, you get hurt. If you mess up, you mess up. Like, like it's not going to do anything for other people. Like it's just going to, just be for yourself. And I've definitely, put myself in a position where, like I said, like my career choice isn't, favored by my family, but they also don't really like know what I can take and where I can really go with my career. Sure. And I don't have to prove to them like anything as long as, I have a job. But so I've like learned that because starting from a young age, I've always said I wanted to be a dentist. And then when I changed that path, they were like, oh my God, like, what do you mean you don't want to be a doctor? Like, what are you talking about? You don't want to be a dentist. And I go into the creative field. Everyone was like, why are you doing that? You're not going to make any money. You're not going to. I was like, I don't care about that. As long as I'm successful for myself and as long as I have achieved the goals that I have set for myself, that's all I really care about. And that's all that matters to me. And so far I'm doing just that. And I think that's one of the things that has really helped me to kind of keep going and push going and keep moving forward. And I talk about it a lot too. And I, going into a space of like marketing, it's a very white field. And it's very, like white male dominated field as well. So I look at it as my job in going into this field as a woman of color to kind of create that space for other people behind me.
I love that.
In my life.
Well, and the courage that it takes to do that and the empowerment that takes to do that, because not everybody is comfortable in that space. And I love that you're willing to go there and you'll be great. You'll be great. So that's exciting. I love hearing that part. All right. So to wrap things up today, we've got a little rapid fire questions. The first thing I'm going to ask you is name 5 activities that nourish you.
5 activities that nourish me. Oh, I cooking. Cooking. It's very like relaxing to me. I don't know why, but it's very relaxing. Being at the beach, beach. I don't like swimming in the ocean because it scares me, but just being at the beach is very relaxing to me. Just laying out, reading a book, just listening to music, being with friends. That's really like nourishing to me. What's another one? Dang, I had these. Looking. Oh, I love like trying new things, like activities or like trying new foods. Love doing that, like going to new restaurants and like trying new things. That's one of the things that it scares me, but like I love doing it. Like I guess something that it nourishes me, I guess. So yeah, I love doing that. Traveling. I love traveling and experiencing other places and seeing other things and learning about other cultures and stuff like that. That also nourishes me. And then I guess my last thing is, what is my last thing? I love being around people that make me happy. I just love being around people that make me happy and that can make me laugh and just having a good time with like people that are just positive. Yeah. That's
awesome. So to wrap it up, 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Okay. I want to feel accomplished. I want to feel, I would say loved and supported. That's one. Love and supported. I want to feel challenged. I want to feel, I guess, let's see. Challenged, loved, and supported. Did I say 3 or did I say 2?
3.
Did I say motivated?
No, you didn't. Okay. That's a good one.
I want to feel motivated. And I want to have, I want to say it in a sentence, but I want to feel and put myself in a situation where I'm always putting selfish. I want to feel selfish because I've never felt selfish.
You don't know what it feels like.
I don't know what it feels like. And I think it's time for me to be a little bit selfish and like really put myself first. So, yeah.
Well, and I think you call it selfish. I call it self-care, but I used to call it selfish. Because but it's one of those things like, I wonder what that feels like. This conversation a couple of episodes ago with my oldest Sierra, like she'd literally never disappointed anyone in her whole life. And she's like, I should do it just to see what it feels like. Gosh, so it's so funny. So I am pretty confident your selfish is not going to be actually selfish, but I'm glad to see you like, okay, we're going to test the waters there, see what happens. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being with me today. I so appreciate it. Again, I could not do this podcast without you. Abby and Valencia, you've gotten to meet the last 2 weeks, are my team. They make this all happen. There is no website. There is no Instagram page. And there's no producing and editing that happens without Valencia. I mean, these 2, I cannot tell you how fortunate I am and how thankful I am for both of them. So thank you for your time today. I'm so excited to see what all the things that you're going to do. Just great stuff. Again, make sure you check out the show notes, check out the blog on the website, embracinglayers.com. Follow us on Instagram, at Embracing Layers, all the things that Abby's created. And just thank you for being with us today and sharing this time. Next week, we will be with my very good friend, Joy Drake. Joy and I go back, close to 30 years in our time together. Joy has just launched a women's sports fitness product that I'm super excited to talk to her about. But she's also just an amazing woman. And she's really been practicing a lot of these things a long time. She's kind of a naturally boundaried, empowered person. So I'm super excited for you to meet her. So look forward to that next episode. But thank you again for your time. Thanks, Abby, for your time.